Alright, hello doctors, welcome back to Pirates of Medicine. In today's video, we are going to continue with the physiology based solutions. This is the second video in this series. So without any further ado, let's begin. So the 26th question over here is that punctuate hemorrhage was found in a patient after application of a tourniquet. With dysfunction of what blood cells is it connected with? So remember, the coagulation or the hemorrhage prevention, as you can say it, that function of the blood is regulated by the platelets or the thrombocytes. Also of the clotting factors, but in the question they asked what blood cells are you connected with. So the platelets and thrombocytes, platelets or thrombocytes, they are responsible for clotting of the blood. So if there is hemorrhages occurring anywhere in the body, then there must be a disorder of the platelets, and that is why the answer over here is platelets. I hope you understand, pretty simple. Let's go to the next one. The 27th question is that students who are taking examinations often have dry mouth. The mechanism that causes this state is the realization of the following reflexes. To understand this, we need to know what conditioned and unconditioned reflexes are. So conditioned and unconditioned reflexes can be simply known by their common names. Like unconditioned reflexes are the inborn behavior forms. On the other hand, conditioned reflexes are the acquired behavior forms. You can understand it this way, that the reflex arc related to the unconditioned reflexes is inherited. For example, the reflexes like sucking, swallowing, sneezing, coughing, or even reflexes like when you go into a dark room, your pupils dilate so that you can see more light. So all these reflexes are present in a baby. You can learn it this way. The reflexes present in a baby when the baby is born are called as unconditioned reflexes, but the reflexes that you acquire through your lifetime, they are called as conditioned reflexes. For example, you get nervous for an exam or an interview, your mouth dries up, your pupils constrict. So all that reflexes are acquired through your lifetime. They are not present in a baby. This is the main mechanism, and there are other differences. You can also see that the unconditioned are permanent, present all life, and conditioned reflexes can be variable on the conditions that they come in, and they may disappear in the absence of these conditions. So remember, unconditioned and conditioned reflexes are shown, or they occur with the help of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. For example, let's take an example of the conditioned reflexes. So if there is a stimuli that stimulates the sympathetic nervous system and makes a conditioned reflex to occur, what can be the effects? The pupils will get dilated, salivation is inhibited, which means dry mouth, bronchi relax, heart rate increases, digestive activity inhibits, glucose released by the liver so that energy can be made if necessary, catecholamines are released from the adrenal gland, bladder is relaxed, and orgasm, ejaculation, and contracts the rectum. So these are the effects of the sympathetic nervous system that occur when there is a conditioned sympathetic or unconditioned sympathetic reflex. Similarly, if there is a conditioned parasympathetic and unconditioned parasympathetic reflex, they occur with the help of the parasympathetic nervous system. So in the question over here, the students who were nervous and they had dry mouth. In dry mouth, first of all, student being nervous is a conditioned reflex. It is not present in a baby. The baby doesn't get nervous if he is put in an examination hall, correct? And then dry mouth is an effect of a sympathetic nervous system. So that is why the reflex over here is conditioned sympathetic. I hope you understand. Let's go to the next one. So the 28th question over here is the middle part of cochlear ear, internal ear, was destroyed in an animal while experiment. It will cause abnormalities of the sound perception of the following frequency. To understand this, let's look at the structure of the middle ear. So look, this is the cochlea, this is the helicoderma, this is the round window, this is the oval window, and these are the middle ear bones. So remember, the hair cells in the cochlea, they respond to various frequencies. If the frequencies are high, the hair cells near the main membrane of the cochlea, near the oval window, they get stimulated and they are responsible for the auditory response. On the other hand, if the frequency is in the middle range, then the middle part of the cochlea, this part, is responsible for this middle part. The middle part is responsible for response. On the other hand, if the frequency is low, then the main membrane of the cochlea near the helicoderma, this part, is responsible for the auditory stimuli response. So remember, high frequency, the main membrane near the oval window; the middle frequency, the middle part of the cochlea; the low frequency, the main membrane of the cochlea near the helicoderma. Simple trick, I hope you understand. So they can ask any of the three frequencies, and I think you know now which part of the cochlea will be stimulated. Let's go to the next one. So the 29th question over here is that a person has decreased diuresis, hypernatremia, hypokalemia, hypersecretion of what hormone can cause these changes. So we already studied this in the previous video. Actions of the aldosterone. Aldosterone hormone has a variety of actions on our body. First of all, it causes reabsorption of sodium or sodium retention from the distal renal tubules. It causes increased excretion of potassium from the same distal renal tubules, and also increased excretion of hydrogen or protons into the distal renal tubules. Also, with the vasopressin, it causes water reabsorption, and it decreases the amount of sodium content in sweat, saliva, and other secretions as well. So basically, it acts as a long-term regulator of blood pressure and salt metabolism. Normally, you can just answer it this way, that aldosterone causes decreased diuresis by retenting water, hypernatremia by retenting sodium, and hypokalemia by excreting more potassium. So I hope you understand this. Pretty simple. Let's go to the next one. So 30 question here is that the temperature of the ambient environment is 38 degree and the relative humidity is 50 degree. What ways of heat emission provide maintaining a constant temperature of the human body? Remember, there are 4 ways by which our body can undergo heat loss. There are 4 mechanisms. First is radiation. Radiation occurs when the body radiates heat in the form of infrared waves. The condition for radiation to occur is that the body should be completely undressed. So a naked person with very less amount of clothing, with the outside environmental temperature less than the body, around 20 degrees C, or the normal temperature, and the humidity being 40 to 60 is the condition in which radiation can occur. If the temperature of the body and surrounding become equal, then the irradiation is impossible. Then we have the conduction. Conduction is by contact. Correct. It is the heat loss which takes place during immediate contact. And remember, conduction is fastest when the body is in direct contact with water. That is why in various medical procedures which require a decrease of temperature, the body is placed in a bath, cold bath, so that the body temperature decreases, and that is due to conduction. Then we have convection. Convection is the removal of heat from the body by convection of air currents. So a continuous airflow is responsible for convection, and convection is inhibited if the temperature is above 30 degrees C. So if the temperature is above 30 to 35 degrees C, you will still feel hot even if you have a fan in your room. Then we have evaporation. Evaporation is the heat loss by sweat, you all know, and this occurs when the environmental temperature is almost normal to the body or quite high, but the main thing that limits evaporation is humidity. If the humidity is more than 100%, then evaporation is inhibited. So remember the 4 mechanisms in the question. The body temperature was around, the temperature of environment was more than body temperature, and the relative humidity is less than 100 degrees. So that is why body will emit by evaporation. 31st is that the minute blood volume in a patient with transplanted heart has decreased as a result of physical activity. What regulative mechanisms are responsible for these changes? Remember, when a heart is transplanted, the vagus and the sympathetic fibers are severed. This is called as a denervated heart. The parasympathetic and the sympathetic influence by the sympathetic fibers and the vagus nerve is not there in a transplanted heart. So the denervated heart is dependent on the circulating catecholamines to respond to stress. So the catecholamines stimulate the beta adrenal receptors, in the heart, so that the heart can respond to the stress. So the reliance of this circulating catecholamines means that the denervated heart shows a much slower increase in heart rate as compared to a normal heart, and this is why it solemnly depends on catecholamines, which is the answer over here. So I hope you understand the concept of denervated heart. So transplanted heart depends only on catecholamines to respond to stress. The 32 question over here is that the isolated muscle of a frog is rhythmically irritated with electrical impulses. Every next impulse, note here, every next impulse is in a period of relaxation from the previous contraction. What muscle contraction? What contraction of the muscle appears? So to understand this, we need to understand the impulse and contraction relation. So the relationship between the stimulus, the impulse, and the muscle tension can be understood with the following. So if there is a weak impulse or weak stimuli, then the nerve fibers and the muscle fibers are not stimulated and there is no contraction. When the stimuli reaches the maximum threshold level, you can see, then the muscles start getting contractions because they are getting excited. So at the threshold, the muscle starts contracting, and as the stimulus starts increasing, then the contractions, they start stronger and stronger, and this is called as multiple motor unit submission. But once a particular limit is really reached, you can see over here, once all the nerve fibers are stimulated, it does not cause any further contraction in the muscle fiber. So you can see this threshold reached, muscle started getting contracted, more impulses came, more contraction occurred, but after this maximum contraction reach, higher and higher impulses will not cause maximum contraction. So this is the relationship between an impulse coming to the muscle which leads to contraction in the muscle. Now, when the impulse comes into the muscle, there are a variety of muscle contraction mechanism which you call a tightness. So the frequency summation, the relationship between the stimulus frequency and muscle tension, can occur in 4 different ways. First of all, when there is a low frequency of the impulses, when the impulses they come in slow frequency, one impulse comes after a little time after another, then this leads to a muscle contraction, morphological peculiarity called as twitch. So at low frequency, the muscle relaxes completely between the stimuli and shows twitches of uniform length. So between every frequency, every impulse that comes, the muscle has time to relax. So you can see over here, contraction, relaxation, contraction, relaxation, contraction, relaxation, and so on. Then trapé. So trapé is when the frequency rate increases to moderate frequency. The muscle relaxes between the contractions, but the rate or the strength of the twitches are stronger. You can see contraction, relaxation, but the strength of the contraction is increasing. Correct? So the difference between twitch and trapé, you can clearly see that the contraction rate is uniform, the muscle has much time to relax, and the strength is completely equal. But here the muscle contraction strength increases, and even though the muscle has time to relax. But then this is where crazy thing occurs. We have a thing called as tetanus, incomplete and complete. So when there is a higher stimulus frequency, the muscle does not have the time to relax completely between the individual contractions, and the force of each previous contraction builds upon the previous one. So the incomplete or the wave-like tetanus, you can see impulse is coming which leads to contraction, and the muscle has time to relax, but as it is relaxing, another contraction comes, and another comes, and gradually the muscle has less time to relax over here. So each next contraction comes in the period of relaxation of the previous contraction. So see, this muscle was contracting and then it was relaxing, but before it was completely able to relax, another contraction came. This again happened, another contraction came. Each contraction is coming in the period of relaxation, and as this frequency is increasing, you can see that they are coming quicker and quicker, and the muscle is not being able to relax, and every impulse comes quickly as compared to the previous one. But note that in incomplete waved tetanus, each subsequent contraction comes in the period of relaxation of previous muscle contraction. Then we have the complete tetanus. Now at a very high stimulus frequency, the muscle does not have time to relax at all. You could see the pattern over here, the muscle was not having enough time, but when the muscle does not have time to relax at all, then between the stimuli, it exhibits a continual contraction with about 4 times as much tension as a single twitch, and this leads to a complete or smooth tetanus, and then the muscle fatigues. In this, you can obviously understand that each subsequent contraction impulse arrives in a period of shortening of previous muscle, or the period of contraction of previous muscle contraction. So the contraction is not even arriving at the period of relaxation now. It is arriving at the period when the muscle is still contracting or still shortening. So this is called as smooth muscle tetanus or complete tetanus. So remember, in the question, each next impulse is in a period of relaxation from the previous contraction. That is waved tetanus. If it was in a period of contraction or shortening of previous muscle, it would have been continuous or smooth tetanus. So I hope you understand the difference between trappe, twitch, incomplete waved tetanus and complete smooth tetanus. Good. Let's go to the next one. So the 33 question over here is that the man has normal sensitivity of his finger skin. However, he does not sense his wedding ring around the finger. What process was induced by wearing of the ring that has caused this phenomenon? So a ring around the finger has been there for a long time. There is a process called as receptor adaptation when there is a decline of the electrical responses of a receptor neuron over a period of time in spite of the continued presence of the stimulus of constant strength. In simple words, a ring that is on your finger, when you put it for the first time, there is a sensation in your mind or your brain that tells you that there's something on the finger. So the receptors on the skin of your finger, they carry that electrical stimulus to your brain and tell your brain that there is something on your finger. But as that ring keeps on your finger for months, for years, you wear that ring, what happens is that your neurons, the receptor neurons on that part of your finger, they get adapted to it. So when a continuous stimulus is being applied, the receptors, first of all, they respond rapidly, but then the response declines until all receptors stop firing. I think you understand this. Now the receptors, all the receptors of the body, may it be baroreceptors, may it be chemoreceptors, may it be the pressure receptors on the skin, they can be divided into rapidly adapting or slowly adapting. Now rapidly adapting receptors, or the phasic receptors as we call it, they respond maximally, but they very briefly to the stimuli. Their response decreases if the stimulus is maintained, which we understood was the most mechanoreceptors of the skin. And then the slowly adapting receptor or the tonic receptors, they keep firing as long as the stimulus is present. They don't adapt very easily, which you can see in the baroreceptors of the blood system, the nociceptors, the pain receptors, the Golgi tendon organ, and the muscle spindle in the muscles. So I hope you understand the receptor adaptation. Let's go to the next one. The 34 question over here is that an aged man has raise of an arterial pressure under his stress. This was caused by activation of the sympathoadrenal system. I told you that the sympathoadrenal system leads to various actions. First of all, in this case, the most important is that it stimulates epinephrine and norepinephrine release. And epinephrine and norepinephrine, they act on the vessels in the heart to increase the blood pressure, arterial pressure. And that is why the answer over here is the sympathoadrenal system. And under stress, the sympathetic nervous system comes into action. So I hope you understand. the fight or flight system, sympathetic nervous system. So the 35 question is of a ECG. ECG study shows that the T waves were positive in the standard extremity leads. Their amplitude and duration were normal. The right conclusion would be that the following process runs normally in the heart in the ventricles. So, a normal ECG. ECG is divided into the P wave, the QRS complex, and the T wave. You can see that the P wave signifies that the atria are depolarizing in response to SA node triggering. So when the SA node generates an action potential, it leads to contraction of the depolarization of the aorta, which is shown by P wave. Then the PR interval signifies the delay, the AV delay, that allows the ventricles to be filled before the impulse reaches the ventricles. And the QRS complex obviously is the depolarization of ventricles, and which triggers the main pumping contraction of the ventricles. The ST segment is the beginning of the ventricle repolarization, and it should be normally flat. And the T wave, it represents the repolarization of the ventricles. So that is why the T wave were positive. They are positive. They are like above the basic line, which means that they are positive. So this shows that repolarization of ventricles is running normally in the heart ventricles. So hope you understand the basic ECG. So PQRST represents these mechanisms in the heart itself. The 36th question is rather simple. The blood minute volume of a 30-year-old woman at rest is 5 liters per minute. What blood volume is pumped through the pulmonary vessels per minute? So remember, whatever blood right ventricle and left ventricle pump, they are equal. Since whatever volume of blood is pumped out by the right ventricle will enter the left ventricle to be pumped out, the amount of blood pumped out through both ventricles per minute is equal. But the pressure can be different. Right ventricle pumps at a lower pressure, around 10 to 20 mm of Hg, while the left ventricle's contraction pressure can be as high as 70 to 105 mm of Hg. So remember, the amount of blood pumped by right ventricle equals to the amount of blood pumped by left ventricle. So may it be 5 liter, may it be 10 liter, it should always be equal. 5 liter, 5 liter. And if it is not equal, then there is a pathology of heart. 37 question is, as a result of long term starvation by the glomerular filtration of a man was accelerated by 20%. The most probable cause of filtration changes under such conditions is the following. So remember, we studied the starvation leads to a decrease of protein content in the serum. You are not eating enough protein, and decrease of protein content leads to decreased synthesis of albumin in the liver, which we call as hypoalbuminemia. And albumin has the function of transporting water, bile acids, salts, medicines, and so many other molecules. And if there is low amount of albumin, it leads to a fall in oncotic pressure, which leads to development of edema. So over here, long-term starvation caused increased filtration because there was a fall of oncotic pressure. That is why you remember that oncotic pressure opposes filtration in kidneys. So if there is less oncotic pressure, there will be more filtration and edema will be developed in the bodies. So 38th question over here is the same one that we just studied. Remember, in this, the nerve muscle contraction, what type of muscle contraction will arise if every subsequent impulse comes in a period of note shortening of the previous muscle. So that is the complete or smooth tetanus. You can also call it as hollow tetanus. See, every subsequent impulse arises in a period of shortening of previous muscle contraction. That is complete tetanus, smooth tetanus, or hollow tetanus, as you can call it. So I hope you understand. Let's go to the next one. 39 is that while shifting the gaze to the closely situated object, the refracting power of the eye's optical medium will be increased by 10 diopters. It results from changing of the such eye structure. So you can obviously understand that this is accommodation, correct? the mechanism of accommodation. Now, accommodation of eye occurs when there is a change of lens shape. The ciliary muscles, they regulate the shape of the lens, the suspensory ligaments and the ciliary muscles, and they cause the lens to bulge or flatten in response to near vision or like far away vision, whatever you need to focus on. So the lens changes shape. So that is why the answer over here is lens. And the lens power changes. Here it is increased by 10 diopters. It can also be increased if you need to focus on something close or something far away. So the spasm of smooth muscles of bronchi developed in a patient, usage of activators of wet membrane cytoreceptors is physiologically valid to decrease the attack. So remember, bronchospasm is an abnormal contraction of the smooth muscle bronchi resulting in acute narrowing and obstruction of the respiratory airway. Bronchospasm is chief characteristic of asthma and bronchitis. Now what happens is that due to smooth muscle contraction in the bronchial wall or the airways, there occurs bronchospasm. So we must give a medicine that dilates the bronchi. That dilates the smooth muscles of the bronchi, relaxes the smooth muscle of the bronchi. So the bronchodilator is a medication that relaxes the smooth muscles and opens the airway. We have certain medications called as bronchodilators. First are beta-2 receptor agonist. Now beta receptor agonist, what happens is that this agonist stimulates the beta receptors, which leads to activation of adenyl cyclase, which leads to conversion of ATP to CAMP, and this CAMP inhibits the release of calcium, and this leads to the smooth muscle relaxation and bronchodilation. So that is why beta-2 receptor agonists are given. Beta-2 receptor agonists are salbutamol and terbutaline. Also, we can give another bronchodilators like anticholinergic drugs, ipratropium bromide, methylxanthine derivatives like theophylline. In our question, only you can give the medication activators of beta adrenoreceptors. Correct? Beta-2 agonist specifically. Alpha agonist and alpha and beta agonist won't work. And if you want to give amcolino drug, then it must be amcolino antagonist, or over here you understood, anticholinergic. So I hope you understood why we gave beta-2 receptor agonist which stimulate the beta-2 receptors. Let's go to the 41st. That the intrapleural pressure is being measured in a person. In what phase has the person held his breath if the pressure is minus 25 cm of H2O? Remember, intrapleural pressure is the pressure in the pleural cavity between the parietal and the visceral layers of the pleura. So, normally the pressure in the pleural cavity is slightly less than the atmospheric pressure, which is known as negative pressure, and this negative pressure helps a lot during the breathing of the breathing process and in the compliance of the lung. So in quiet inspiration, when you are taking inspiration passively without involving the accessory muscles, the intrapleural pressure is around minus 7 cm of H2. In quiet expiration, it is less negative, which is minus 3 cm of H2O. See, in inspiration it is more negative, in expiration, quiet expiration, it is less negative. In a forced inspiration, when you are using your accessory muscles of inspiration, it becomes quite more negative, around minus 25 cm of H2O. And you can note the pattern. In forced expiration, it becomes positive, around plus 3 cm of H2O. Now these are not fixed values. Sometimes you can see the values in mm of Hg, but in Croc most of these values will be in centimeter of H2O. But remember, inspiration is more negative than expiration. So if the expiration is minus 3, then the inspiration is minus 7. If the expiration is positive, then the forced inspiration is like very high amount of negative pressure. So I hope this clears it. Let's go to the question itself. The question was minus 25 centimeter of H2O, and this intrapleural pressure is seen in speed up inspiration or forced inspiration. So let's go to the next one. 42 question is rather simple, mathematical problem in physiology. On examination of the person, it was revealed that the minute volume of the heart is 3500 milliliter. Systolic volume is 50 milliliter. What frequency of cardiac contraction is there? So stroke volume or systolic volume is the volume of blood ejected by the ventricle per beat. Cardiac output or minute volume of heart is the product of the heart rate with the stroke volume, so that it gives the amount of blood pumped through the ventricle per minute. So cardiac output is heart rate into systolic volume. In the question we have systolic volume 50 milliliter, cardiac output 3500 milliliter, and from the formula we can calculate the amount of heart rate, which is 3500 by 50, which gives us 70 beats per minute. Simple question, you have to remember this formula. Cardiac output is equal to heart rate into systolic volume. So let's go to the next one. 43 question is that due to activation of ion channels of external membrane of excitable cells, its rest potential has significantly increased. What channels were activated? So remember, in the question they have mentioned that the rest potential has significantly increased. Now resting potential is the potential difference or the imbalance of electrical charge that exists between the interior of the excitable cell and their surroundings. The resting potential of electricity lies in the range of -60 to -95 millivolt, which it is differentiated in various cells. Some cells can have -60 resting membrane potentials, some can have around -95, and the inside of the cell is negatively charged. The difference in the number of positively charged potassium ions inside and outside dominates the resting membrane potential. So the potassium ions specifically are what is responsible for the resting membrane potential. In the question, if the rest potential is increasing, then the potassium channels are activated, which causes a change in the resting potential, because potassium ions are responsible for maintaining the resting membrane potential. So I hope you understand. Let's go to the next one. So 44 question is that the ventral roots of a 5 frontal segment of spinal cord were cut during experiment in the animal. What changes will take place in the innervation region? So I told you this in the last video as well, that if there is a loss of movements in the ventral root or the anterior root of spinal cord, then these ventral root of spinal cord, they are the motor roots. They contain afferent fibers that carry information to the skeletal muscles and to control the motor or glandular functions. The cell bodies of these motor neurons are located in the ventral roots of the spinal cord, and the axons of these motor neurons located in the anterior root of spinal cord, they are the one which forms the afferent nerves. So if there is an injury to the anterior horn or the ventral root of the spinal cord, then there must be loss of movements. Understood? And also, if there is an injury to the dorsal root or the posterior part of the spinal cord horn, then this is responsible for sensory information. So there must be a loss of sensation if there is an injury to the dorsal root or the posterior part of the spinal cord horn. I hope you understand the difference. Let's go to the next one. So the 45 question is that GFR increased for 20% due to prolonged starvation in the person. The most likely cause of filtration changes under this condition is the following. So the same question repeated. Starvation leads to decrease of protein content in serum, causing hypoalbuminemia. Hypoalbuminemia causes fall in oncotic pressure, which leads to edema development, and decreased filtration pressure, because oncotic pressure normally opposes the filtration, and if it is low, then the filtration has no opposition, and the hydrostatic pressure in capillaries causes more pressure, which leads to more filtration, and that is why GFR is increased. So remember, in case of fall in oncotic pressure due to protein starvation, it leads to high GFR, high amount of urine being secreted. Then we have 46th question. that the patient has transverse disruption of spinal cord below the fourth thoracic segment. What changes of the respiration will it cause? So if you look at the innervation roots of the respiratory muscles, first of all you need to remember that inspiration muscles are the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles, and expiration or exhalation, it is a passive process. There are no muscles involved in this process. So the primary inspiratory muscles, the diaphragm and external intercostals, are innervated from the cervical C3 to C5, and in external intercostals are innervated from T1 to T11. So if there is any damage above the thoracic 5, which was in the question, there would be no interruption in the normal respiration and normal breathing, because the primary inspiratory muscles are still getting the nervous supply from their roots. So if there is a damage at this level, then there would be no change. The respiration will be unchanged. It will be normal. Obviously, there would be a change that the forced respiration won't be able to occur, forced inspiration and forced expiration, but they are asking about normal breathing. So respiration will stay unchanged. Obviously, if there is a damage at the level of above C1, then the respiration will stop. I hope you understand. The innervation of the primary inspiratory muscles is from the C to C7 or C3 to C5 and T1 to T11, but if there is a damage to the T5, like below the T5 the spinal cord is not working but it is working above it, so the primary inspiratory muscles will be unchanged and the respiration will occur normally. But obviously damage above the C1 level will cause dysfunctioning of the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscles, and the respiration will come to a stop. 47 question is, due to cranial trauma, the patient developed the symptoms intentional tremor, dysmetry, ardiodokinesis, dysarthria. What structure of the brain is injured? Remember, the cerebellum is an important structure and plays an important role in the motor control, and all these symptoms are manifested if there is a cerebellar dysfunction. So dysdiokinesia is a difficulty in carrying out rapid alternating movements. Ataxia is difficulty with balance, speaking and walking. Dysarthria is slurred or speech is very slow. Nystagmus is the eyes make repetitive and uncontrolled movements. Intention tremor and hypotonia, you understand? And all these are manifested in the cerebellar dysfunction. So that is why the answer is cerebellum. All these symptoms are characteristic for a cerebellum injury. 48 question is repeated. Here the lightly dressed man is standing in a room whose air temperature is 14 degrees Celsius. What is the heat loss mechanism? I told you, radiation occurs when the temperature is lower than the body, and it occurs more if the person is wearing less amount of clothes, and this is happening in the question, and that is why the heat loss is by heat radiation. 49 question is that the ECG of a patient with hyperfunction of thyroid gland shows heart hurry or tachycardia. It is indicated by depression of the following ECG element. So tachycardia can be understood. A quick way to easily measure the ventricular rate is by examining the RR interval, the distance between two consecutive R waves. Mathematically, you can calculate it by this. You can count the cubes between each R, and there is a square. There is a scale given down with the ECG that one square represents this amount of milliseconds, and you can put it in the formula. You can put the RR interval in milliseconds, and divided by 60,000, and you can get the heart rate. Now, if you don't want to do this calculation, you can obviously see that if the RR interval is shortened, the distance between two consecutive RR waves is less, then there is heart hurry or tachycardia. And if there is a wide distance between each R wave, then it is bradycardia. Quite simple. I hope you understand. Let's go to the next one. So a peripheral segment of vagus nerve on a dog's neck was being stimulated in course of an experiment. The following changes of cardiac activity could be meanwhile observed. So remember, we did this question before. Vagus nerve supplies the parasympathetic nervous supply to the heart, and the parasympathetic nervous supply stimulation leads to decrease in heart rate. So that is why stimulation of the vagus nerve leads to heart rate fall. So I hope you understand this. So that is all for today. I hope you liked the video today. We're trying our very hard to post more videos. We used to post a new video after 3 days, but we are trying to post a new video within an interval of 2 days. So please be patient, and we know that you're trying hard to study for this year's CROC. So please keep on studying, please preparing. We'll be uploading the next video within 2 days. I hope these videos are helping you, and if they are, please consider subscribing to the channel. Please consider sharing the channel with your friends so that everyone can be benefited. And it's been good. See you in the next one.